Hey everybody, welcome back to Daily Devotions with Pastor Peter. We are in Genesis 35. Let's jump to it. Then God said to Jacob, "Get ready to move to Bethel and settle there, and build an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." So Jacob told everyone in his household, "Get rid of all the pagan idols, purify yourselves, and put on clean clothing. We are now going to Bethel, where I will build an altar to the God who answered my prayers when I was in distress. He has been with me wherever I have gone." So they gave Jacob all their pagan idols and earrings, and he buried them under the great tree near Shechem. As they set out, a terror from God spread over the people in all the towns of that area, so no one attacked. Eventually, Jacob and his household arrived at Luz, also called Bethel, in Canaan. Jacob built an altar there and named the place El Bethel, which means God of Bethel, because God had appeared to him there when he was fleeing from his brother Esau. Soon after this, Rebekah's old nurse Deborah died. She was buried beneath the oak tree in the valley below Bethel. Ever since, the tree has been called Allon Bakuth, which means oak of weeping. Now that Jacob had returned from Paddan Aram, God appeared to him again at Bethel. God blessed him, saying, "Your name is Jacob, but you will not be called Jacob any longer. From now on, your name will be Israel." So God renamed him Israel. Then God said, "I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. You will become a great nation, even many nations. Kings will be among your descendants, and I will give you the land I once gave to Abraham and Isaac. Yes, I will give it to you and your descendants after you." Then God went up from that place where he had spoken to Jacob. Jacob set up a stone pillar to mark the place where God had spoken to him. Then he poured wine over it as an offering to God and anointed the pillar with olive oil. And Jacob named the place Bethel, which means house of God, because God had spoken to him there. Leaving Bethel, Jacob and his clan moved on towards Ephrath. But Rachel went into labor while they were still some distance away. Her labor pains were intense. After a very hard delivery, the midwife finally exclaimed, "Don't be afraid, you have another son." Rachel was about to die. But with her last breath, she named the baby Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrows. The baby's father, however, called him Benjamin, which means son of my right hand. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Jacob set up a stone monument over Rachel's grave, and it can be seen there to this day. Then Jacob traveled on and camped beyond Migdal Edar. While he was there, Reuben had intercourse with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Jacob soon heard about it. These are the names of the 12 tribes, sons of Jacob. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's oldest son, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's servant, were Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's servant, were Gad and Asher. These are the names of the sons who were born to Jacob at Paddan Aram. So Jacob returned to his father Isaac in Mamre, which is near Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had both lived as foreigners. Isaac lived for 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died at a ripe old age, joining his ancestors in death, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Family issues, my friends. Everybody has them. Anybody who says they don't, they're lying. And as we see here, there's some things that just were briefly mentioned and some things that were not. But we see God clearly establishing his covenant with Jacob. Went to Bethel, created a monument for him to remember that. Jacob told everyone in verse 2, and I think this is important for all of us. He told everyone, "Get rid of all your pagan idols, purify yourselves, and put on clean clothing. We are now going to Bethel, where I will build an altar to the Lord." How many of us have idols in our lives that we still keep? What is it that we put before God? See, idols could be anything. They don't have to be statues made by human hands, but they could be anything that we put before God. Could be our work. Could be something that's not tangible per se. Could be ideals. Could be expectations. See, everything comes down. We need to take everything that we place our trust in. And even our idols could be our very self and our abilities. I read somewhere, I think it was Simon Sinek who said it, but I can't be sure. Simon Sinek is a very interesting leader and has a great understanding of leadership. But one of the things he said, or someone said, that really struck me was the more educated a person is, the less ability they have to act. And with my understanding of things in life, it seems very true. The more educated a person is, they realize the benefits and the hazards to doing whatever it is that they're supposed to do, that rather than acting upon something and having faith and trusting in God, they cower back into inactivity because they're afraid of what could happen to them. And I'm not saying this to slam educated people. I would consider myself an educated man. I went to school. I have a master's degree. Master's of Divinity degree is a hard degree to finish. People have finished it, but it's a long, drawn-out journey to finish the Master of Divinity. And still, I want to pursue more education. So, by the way, if anybody wants to support me with a doctorate of ministry, it's about 20 grand. I'd love to go get another degree because there's so much research and reading that I've already done. Might as well get credit for it, right? But I consider myself educated, but at the same time, one of the things that I have to always catch myself in is that when God tells me to go somewhere, I should just go. See, God said, get ready, move to Bethel, and go there. I mean, how many of us would be willing to uproot our whole family and just move and go somewhere? It's rare, but then when God tells us to go, go. The people who are educated have a lot to lose, and when you have a lot to lose, you hang on to it. And the more you hang on to it, the more you lose whatever it is that God's going to give. It wasn't until he went to Bethel that God answered his prayers and in his distress and told him that he will be a great nation. And sometimes for us, it isn't until we let go of our idols. And a lot of us who go to church, a lot of us who sit in our pews, who watch these videos, we still hold on to something. Everything that we have, we need to be able to let go if God calls us to. And we see that lesson. If we go back, we see that lesson with Abraham. He was willing to let go of his only son. However painful that could have been for him, how devastating, how hard it would be for him to explain to his wife, and even to this community as a person who is killing and murdering his own son. He was willing to go through with it. Doesn't matter what reputation comes out of whatever it is that God has called us to do. The key thing is letting go of our idols, whatever they may be, whatever we place our trust in, and placing our trust in God, living at the mercy of his voice or his calling or his leadership, and then going. It doesn't mean that we will be living in a family with no issues. As we see later on in this chapter, God did promise in verse 11 and 12, then God said, I am El Shaddai, God Almighty. We'll get into El Shaddai another time. Be fruitful and multiply. You will become a great nation, even many nations. Kings will be among your descendants, and I will give you the land. This is the promise that God gave. And, we see that he still goes through turmoil. His love of his life, Rachel, dies, giving birth to a son. They had Benjamin, and that was a blessing to Jacob, but it was also a sad there. Also in verse 21, sadness comes again too. Reuben had intercourse with Bilhah, his father's concubine. Didn't mention too much about it, but this is something that's not right. Jacob had to deal with some major junk in his family. But regardless, God was with him. Regardless, God's going to bless him. And that goes for us too. Because we follow God, it doesn't mean that all of our problems are going to be solved and everything's going to be okay. It does mean that his presence is with us no matter where we go. We will still face difficulties. We will still experience the sins of other people in our very own lives and family. We're not immune to the sins of others. We're not even immune to our own sins. But as we see here, in verse 23 onwards, we see the list of names of his sons. And then God has blessed him with 12 tribes of Israel, right? And at the very end, his father died. Parents passing away should be a sad thing because your parents were the ones who coached you, who were there with you, by your side, who raised you up, changed your diapers, wiped your butt, whatever it is that parents do. Hopefully you had good parents, as I do. But in verse 28, Isaac lived for 180 years. Then he breathed his last breath and died at a ripe old age, joining his ancestors in death. And the beautiful thing here, that God let this become a reunion. His sons Esau and Jacob buried him. It's an honor to be able to do this, to stand by your father at the very end, because he's done so much. We all have to go through suffering in our lives. We all have to go through challenges. But it's best when we do it God's way, not our own way. What idols do we have in our lives that we need to let go of, my friends? And whatever they are, whatever idols are left in us that we need to remove, sometimes we have to take them away. Sometimes God will take them away. And God will take them away as we're kicking and screaming. But from that, we could receive the blessing that he has for us, because it requires us to leave our place and to go to where he wants us to go in order to receive his blessing. Take care, my friends. Take some time to pray. Remove your idols. God bless. Bye-bye.